So people talk of selling coals to Newcastle or ice to the Eskimos. Well, we are selling bicycles to the Chinese. I was in Shanghai, Beijing, and Chengdu. Chengdu, that well-known city, which is bigger than London and none of us have heard of, but we are selling them one or two of our little bikes. So this is what it is. It's pretty straightforward. Handlebar flips up, the saddle pops up, you give it a little flip, and there you have a bicycle. And the luggage goes on the front, which is quite handy, and off you go. And we started this business in London, and we started courtesy of Mr. Andrew Ritchie, who started in 1975. And of course, there's a lot of chat of how businesses suddenly become successful and overnight success. But of course, no one sees the years of pushbacks and troubles and knockbacks. And Andrew had plenty of that. It took him 10 years to get the Brompton off the ground. Everyone laughed at him, including Raleigh, who at the time were making 1 million bikes up in Nottingham. And now, sadly, aren't making any bikes. And rather depressingly, we are, with our nearly 50,000 bikes, are now the largest manufacturer of bikes in the UK. But we do have the rejection letter from Raleigh sitting up in the factory, just to remind us. And Andrew spent 10 years getting it going, and it was finally one of his customers, because he sort of had a bit where he went bust. But it was one of his customers who got so frustrated they couldn't buy more bikes that got him going in 1988. And we've been busy making our bikes since then. And there is a belief that you can't manufacture something in the UK, that we don't manufacture anything in the UK, and you certainly can't manufacture anything in London. But in fact, you can manufacture things in London. And there is a real opportunity for the British mind, the British slightly eccentric approach to life, our cosmopolitan quirkiness, the way we look at things slightly differently, to come up with nice ideas, to make them and to sell them and make a success of it around the world. We found ourselves in London, not because we were a brand consultant, and we thought London was good brand, or anything like that. We found ourselves in London because Andrew came up with the idea in London, principally because he needed something and he didn't have one, so he invented it. He wanted to make the bike, and he obviously wanted to pedal to work, so he wasn't going to be going too far from where he lives, which is opposite the Brompton Oratory on the Cromwell Road, not far from here. And so he started in London by necessity. And we've grown the business, and it became, when I arrived, 24 people. We've now got 230 people, and we're still busy away making our bicycles. And people say to me, but you're completely bonkers, and why are you making your bike in London? And in some respects, they're right. The cost of labor is high. The overhead is quite high. But actually, what we have in our factory is a tremendous way of protecting our intellectual property. The bike itself is quite quirky and quite different, but actually the way we make it is far more quirky and just as inventive, in fact more inventive. And inside that process is a huge amount of intellectual property. And that property, that knowledge is well protected in London, because there are no other fruitcakes making bicycles in London. If we moved our bike to where most of the bikes are made, which is in Taichung in Taiwan, and we taught them how to make our bike, and we'd have to make jigs for them, we'd teach them how to do it, it would take us 2 or 3 years, and we'd be able to do it. I mean, someone in Taiwan is no less capable of making a bicycle than someone in London. But what would happen once they got the hang of it and worked out how to repair jigs and fiddle around with our clever auto-braze machine, if we didn't treat them right and we didn't look after them, and we do our best to do that, but we can't keep everybody happy all of the time, somebody would waft a bit more money under their nose, and they'd be able to bugger off to the competition. And they wouldn't have to move house, they wouldn't have to take their children out of school, and there would go our intellectual property, just dribbling out of the company across to the competition. And we've worked hard and thought hard to create that property and that intellectual property. And that has definitely over the years protected us. And we have other things that come from being, I suppose, in the UK more than just in London. The UK is, by its very nature, not the cheapest place in the world to make something. But sort of necessity is the mother of invention. You have to be efficient in the UK. You can't get away with being wasteful. You have to be clever. You have to be simple, actually. And simplicity is often quite difficult. It's easy to come up with a complicated solution, but an elegant, simple solution takes time and thought, and it's more efficient and it delivers a nicer product. And the UK is full of companies that have mastered that. In fact, our motor industry is one of the best in the world for doing things very efficiently. So one of the things we've been able to do as a little company growing up is learn. You know, it's right on our doorstep how to get best practice and embed it into our company. And we've got some cool stuff going on. We're using little Raspberry Pis on our line. If you're familiar with a little Raspberry Pi, it's not a cake, it's a little mini computer, and you program it yourself. And then we've stuffed on a 60-pound touchscreen telly, and they're on each one of our assembly stations, and they all talk to each other. And then it knows who the assembler is and whether he's been on that station before. And we've designed it all ourselves, done it all ourselves. I mean, I've only got 10 minutes, so I can't go into the detail. But suffice to say, it's great. And we're applying not just bits of metal, but we're trying programming. We're applying best practice from lots and lots of different areas. And that's enabling us to offer something which is very efficient. And the final thing that I think Britain has, and again, it's not so much that we can't do anything that anyone else couldn't do. We are inventive. We are slightly quirky. We are able to look at things and do things a bit differently. And inside this company and inside what we are trying to do, we're creating products that others wouldn't have the confidence to do. And that is allowing us to export and excite and do things that other companies haven't seen. There is technology going on. And I know that in many parts of the UK, because they saw something on the BBC, they will believe that within 3 years, Brompton would be printing all its bicycles, because it won't need presses and laser cutting and all this business. But we're not there yet with the printing. There is technology to come, but we are a long way from being able to not be clever, not use laser cutting machines, not use forging machines. And there is huge potential in the UK. Peter talked about the fact that we don't have enough aircraft carriers, and he's right. We are a little business that has grown from a small business to a medium-sized business, and we haven't done anything hugely clever. Little bits of cleverness, but actually, we've just taken the best practice that is already there in the aircraft carrier. And there are so many businesses in the UK that are not fulfilling their potential. And if they could just have the confidence to take a bit of the knowledge from the Nissan or from the Jaguar Land Rover or from the Triumph, a third of all motors in the world are made in the UK. Ford engines are made in the UK. It's an impressive statistic. And if we could get those businesses to just improve their performance a little bit, we might claw back a couple of places. I mean, it makes me a bit frustrated that a country led for a long time by Mr. Berlusconi and his Bunga Bunga parties is making more stuff than we are in the UK. It's just beyond belief how the Italians doing that. And technology is there, but it's not to be overplayed, and often technology is overplayed. And in our business, actual simplicity, communication, talking to your staff, understanding how things might go wrong, making a product that works is really important. I've got about 2 minutes to go, so I better rattle on through. We are an island. We are in the Royal Geographical Society, and you'll see, we're using my classic laser, that there is a chap there on the South Pole on the Brompton. We didn't sponsor him. He took it there because it was useful to him, and he used it every day for the 3 weeks while he was doing research. It was awesome, and sent us some lovely photographs. But we are an island, and we get bored with our little island, so we go shooting off around the world to go and have great adventures and have a stiff upper lip and occasionally die and say heroic things to our friends before we cop it. But that means we're quite good at export. We don't mind tromping off and going and seeing people. We're a country that's full of foreigners. We're all a bunch of foreigners. So we're full of interesting, quirky, different people. And that helps when you're getting out there and reaching out and exporting your product. And another thing is we are pretty honest. And I think, interestingly, from a manufacturing perspective, there is this desire amongst consumers. They're just bored with the marketing crap. They're bored with the sort of advert that tells you that if you put this cream on, you'll be like the sort of, spray tan, completely fake person on the advert. Or if you buy this watch, your child will be wearing a little suit and a smart tie and won't have accidentally puked up on you. It's just rubbish. And honesty is important. And I think, funnily enough, manufacturing, there is this awareness through the fact that the world is becoming smaller, through the fact that people can bring out their little camera and post something on YouTube to say, actually, these trainers are being made in some slum in Bangladesh. And we don't want that. And this belief that you can buy something that may not be cheap, but is extremely good value, where you have a sense of integrity and you have a feeling you know how it's been made, how the people are that are making it, and how they're being looked after. I think that is increasingly important. And I think that it is something that people will value more and more. The consumer era of just buying stuff and when the light bulb goes, chucking it in the bin, I think is on its way out. And from my perspective, good riddance. I'm now getting into my dangerous period of going over time, so I shall move on very quickly. I will end just by saying that there is so much potential for manufacturing in the UK, and there is a huge amount of ideas and opportunity, and crowdfunding, the fact that we do have the ability to test, to prototype so cheaply now with 3D printing. It won't be the solution for manufacturing, but the barriers to entry are so much smaller. It allows innovative, small startup manufacturing to happen much, much more quickly. And so the UK does have an opportunity, and there is a renaissance for manufacturing. But do I think everything should be made in the UK? No, I don't. If we're talking real vision, I think we can inspire, we can come up with the ideas, we can manufacture in the UK. But ultimately, manufacturing ought to be done locally. You should be manufacturing for the local community. You shouldn't be manufacturing things and then flying it halfway around the world. But there are quantities of scale. And if we get to be as successful as the man that sucks up the dust off the floor with his little yellow Hoover, then we will, in time, take what we've learnt in the UK and get to a point where we can supply it locally around the world. But at the moment, we're still tiddly and small, and we have a long way to go. Thank you very much.